Australia has seen its fair share of criminals, but some take infamy to an entirely different level. We're talking about drug lords, ruthless killers, and criminal masterminds who ended up behind bars. These aren't your average offenders. This list dives into the most notorious criminals currently serving time in Australia. From brutal murderers to drug kingpins running billion-dollar operations, these criminals have left a lasting impact. Some dominated headlines for years, while others were only recently caught. Either way, their crimes shook the nation, and now they're facing justice. Join us as we count down 10 of Australia's most infamous criminals who got caught and convicted. You won't believe some of the shocking stories ahead. Let's start with a name that sent shockwaves across the country, Bandali Debs. Known as one of Australia's most notorious criminals, Debs is a convicted serial killer who has been locked away for years. In 1998, he was responsible for the execution-style murders of two Melbourne police officers, Sergeant Gary Silk and Senior Constable Rodney Miller, an attack that horrified the nation. But his crimes didn't stop there. Debs was later linked to the murders of two sex workers in the 1990s, cementing his place in Australia's criminal history. Though he evaded capture for a time, justice finally caught up with him, and in 2005, he was sentenced to multiple life terms with no possibility of parole. What makes Debs' case even more chilling is that his crimes weren't random acts of violence. They were cold, calculated, and deliberate. He wasn't just another reckless criminal. He was a methodical killer who carried out horrific murders without remorse. When the truth about his crimes came to light, the shock was immense. A man who might have seemed like just another bad guy turned out to be one of the most ruthless killers in Australian history. To this day, his name is synonymous with pure evil. Debs will spend the rest of his life behind bars with no chance of parole. He'll never walk free again, and justice ensures he pays for his brutal crimes every single day. Now, let's move on to another name that still haunts those familiar with his story, Alan Baker. If you know his case, you know just how terrifying he is. In 1973, Baker and his accomplice, Kevin Crump, went on a violent killing spree that shook the nation. Together, they committed two brutal murders, Ian James Lamb and Virginia Guy Morse, senseless acts of cruelty that left families shattered. Baker wasn't just a petty criminal, he was a remorseless killer. The sheer brutality of his crimes cemented his reputation as one of Australia's most dangerous criminals. After his capture, Baker was sentenced to life in prison, but his infamy never faded. Even behind bars, his name still sends shivers down spines. What makes this case even more disturbing is the calculated nature of the killings. Baker and Crump weren't just reckless criminals looking for trouble. They were cold-blooded murderers whose actions left an indelible mark on Australia's criminal history. The sheer savagery of their crimes still lingers in public memory, a grim reminder of just how depraved some individuals can be. Today, Baker remains in prison, serving a life sentence with no chance of parole. There's no escaping justice for him. He will spend the rest of his days locked away, a stark warning of the consequences of extreme violence. His name stands as a chilling symbol of crime at its worst, and there's no doubt he'll go down as one of Australia's most notorious criminals. Here's a name you might not be familiar with, Leon Emmanuel Sofilis. While he may not be a household name, he's certainly gained notoriety for all the wrong reasons. In early 2025, Sofilis made headlines when he was arrested for a shocking and potentially devastating crime. He was charged with attempting to set fire to the Newtown Synagogue in Sydney, Australia, an act that could have ended in tragedy. This wasn't just a random act of vandalism. Sofilis had a clear and disturbing agenda, and his actions were classified as domestic terrorism. His arrest sent shockwaves through the country, raising serious concerns about the growing threat of extremist violence. How did someone go from being just another name in the system to orchestrating such a horrifying attack? Turns out, Sofilis wasn't a stranger to law enforcement. He had a history of criminal activity, and those familiar with his past weren't entirely surprised by his arrest. With known ties to far-right extremist groups, he wasn't just a lone wolf. He was a dangerous individual with a track record of making violent threats. Authorities took his case seriously, ensuring he wouldn't have another opportunity to carry out his plans. Now, Sofilis sits behind bars, awaiting trial for the attempted firebombing. While it's still early in the legal process, there's little doubt that, if convicted, he'll be spending a long time in prison. This isn't a case where someone walks away with a light sentence. He's facing serious charges that could keep him locked up for decades. Expect to hear his name in the news as the case unfolds. He may not be as infamous as some other criminals, but make no mistake, he's a dangerous figure, and his arrest was a necessary step in keeping Australia safe. Next on the list is Hussein Chamas. And let me tell you, his story sounds like something straight out of a crime thriller. Chamas isn't just another small-time criminal. He's a suspected drug kingpin who nearly slipped through the cracks until law enforcement took him down. In January 2025, Chamas was arrested in Sydney for his involvement in a massive methamphetamine trafficking ring. This wasn't just a minor operation. Authorities uncovered a multi-million-dollar drug empire, one that contributed to countless cases of addiction and destruction. But his crimes didn't stop at drug smuggling. When police raided his operation, they also found a stash of illegal firearms, adding even more weight to his list of charges. Chamas was no ordinary dealer. He was a major player in Australia's drug trade, and his arrest marked a significant victory in the fight against organized crime. With law enforcement cracking down on his empire, it's clear that his days of running the streets are over. Now, he faces a long and uncertain future behind bars, where he'll have plenty of time to reflect on the empire he built and lost. Right now, Chamas remains in custody, awaiting trial, and let's be clear, he's not getting off lightly. He's staring down a long list of charges, any one of which could put him behind bars for decades. If convicted, he's likely looking at a life-altering sentence. With Australia ramping up its fight against the growing drug crisis, criminals like Chamas are at the top of law enforcement's priority list. His arrest is a major win in the battle against organized crime, potentially preventing even more devastation on the streets. So, keep an eye on this case. His trial is set to be a big one. And if the prosecution gets their way, Chamas won't be seeing freedom again anytime soon. Now, this next case is truly disturbing. Paul Lesk wasn't just any criminal. He was a respected Crown prosecutor, a man who was supposed to uphold the law and fight for justice. But in early 2025, his name became synonymous with betrayal when police raided his home and discovered hundreds of files containing child abuse material. This wasn't just a shocking case, it was an outright scandal. Lesk had built a career on prosecuting criminals, yet behind closed doors, he was hiding one of the most repulsive secrets imaginable. How could someone in such a position of power betray the very system they were sworn to protect? That's what made this case so horrifying. Now, Lesk is facing a slew of serious charges and is currently behind bars, awaiting trial. With the overwhelming evidence against him, it's almost certain that he won't be walking free anytime soon. If convicted, he could be looking at a decades-long prison sentence, one that would ensure he never abuses his position of power again. The fallout from his arrest has been massive, not just because of the horrific nature of his crimes, but because of the deep betrayal of public trust. A man who once represented justice is now the face of corruption and disgrace. His name will go down in history as a stark reminder that even those who seem untouchable can be hiding dark and twisted secrets. Next, we have a case that reads like a plot straight out of a thriller, Tammy Ferrugia and Scott Marshall. These two didn't just dabble in crime, they were on the verge of committing an act of pure destruction. In January 2025, authorities made a chilling discovery, a caravan packed with explosives, owned by Ferrugia and Marshall. But it didn't stop there. Investigators also found a hit list, which included several synagogues in Sydney. This was no random act of criminal mischief. This was a calculated plot fueled by extremist ideology, and it could have ended in disaster. What makes this case even more disturbing is the motive behind it. Ferrugia and Marshall weren't just criminals. They were driven by an ideology of pure hate. Their plot wasn't random. It was a carefully planned attack targeting religious sites, fueled by extremism. The idea that this couple could quietly scheme something so destructive sent shockwaves through the community. Thankfully, authorities intervened before their plan could become a reality. Both Ferrugia and Marshall had long rap sheets, and their arrest wasn't exactly unexpected. Law enforcement had been keeping tabs on them, knowing they were part of a wider extremist network. It was only a matter of time before they escalated their activities, and when they did, it nearly ended in disaster. Now, they're both in custody, facing serious charges related to terrorism, explosives, and conspiracy to commit harm. The fact that they had a hit list and were fully prepared to carry out deadly attacks proves just how dangerous they were. As their trial progresses, one thing is clear: this won't end well for them. If convicted, they could face decades, or even life, behind bars. And honestly, given the gravity of their crimes, that's exactly where they belong. Now, let's talk about Graham Potter, a name that's been synonymous with crime for decades. His story reads like a Hollywood thriller, complete with murder, drug trafficking, and a dramatic run from the law. Originally convicted of murder in 1981, Potter served time for a brutal crime that shocked the nation. But his time behind bars didn't put an end to his criminal career. Instead, Potter found himself entangled in a massive drug conspiracy in the early 2000s. He became a key player in the illicit drug trade, constantly slipping through law enforcement's grasp. For over a decade, he was Australia's most wanted fugitive, managing to evade capture time and time again. But in 2022, his luck finally ran out. Police tracked him down in Queensland, ending a 12-year manhunt. Now, back in custody, Potter is facing a mountain of charges, including conspiracy to murder and large-scale drug trafficking. Authorities consider him one of the most dangerous criminals in Australia, and his capture was a major victory for law enforcement. At this point, Potter's future is sealed. He's once again behind bars, and if convicted, he'll likely spend the rest of his life in prison. He may have spent years on the run, but there's no escaping justice this time. His days as a fugitive are over, and it's safe to say, he won't be getting out anytime soon. This next criminal is someone you definitely wouldn't want to cross: Robert Gordon Polybank G. A key figure in one of Australia's most infamous drug trafficking rings, G wasn't just another dealer, he was the mastermind, orchestrating a multi-million-dollar operation that stretched across the country. From methamphetamine to cocaine, he had his hands in everything, ensuring a steady flow of illicit substances flooded the streets. For years, he managed to stay under the radar, until he didn't. In 2023, after years of evading law enforcement, G's luck finally ran out. Authorities had been building a case against him for a long time, meticulously gathering evidence before making their move. When they finally swooped in, his arrest sent shockwaves through Australia's criminal underworld. His empire, built on deception, violence, and exploitation, collapsed overnight, leaving behind a wake of destruction. Now, G sits behind bars, facing a slew of serious charges. Given the scale of his operation, there's little doubt he'll be locked away for decades, if not the rest of his life. His name is now synonymous with one of Australia's most notorious drug empires, and freedom is likely off the table for good. G's downfall was a major victory for law enforcement, proving that even the most powerful figures in organized crime aren't untouchable. His reign over the drug trade is officially over, and now he's paying the price. Now, let's talk about David Campbell, a name that at first might not ring a bell, but his crimes definitely left a mark. Campbell wasn't always in the spotlight, but by the time authorities caught up with him, he was a major player in one of the largest drug smuggling operations Australia had ever seen. His specialty? Importing staggering amounts of cocaine into the country, operating on an international scale with a network that stretched across borders. In 2024, Campbell was finally arrested, but not before amassing a fortune from his illegal empire. His operation was colossal, involving tons of cocaine and millions of dollars in dirty profits. He operated with the confidence of someone who thought he was untouchable, running the kind of high-stakes game that few ever get away with. But eventually the walls closed in. Authorities tracked him down overseas, and after a lengthy investigation, he was extradited back to Australia. Now awaiting trial, Campbell faces a mountain of charges, including drug trafficking, conspiracy, and involvement in organized crime. If convicted, and given the sheer scale of his crimes, that seems inevitable, he's looking at decades behind bars. The days of evading justice are over, and the only future he's looking at now is one behind prison walls. What's truly shocking about Campbell's case is how long he managed to keep his criminal empire running. Operating on an international scale, he thought he was untouchable, until everything came crashing down. His downfall serves as a stark reminder that no matter how carefully you try to conceal illegal activity, justice always catches up in the end. Now, Let's talk about Todd Patrick Richard Ryan, a man who didn't just break the law, but betrayed the very system that trusted him. Ryan's story is a textbook case of greed and deception. As an employee of the Australian Taxation Office, he had access to sensitive financial data, but instead of upholding his duty, he saw an opportunity and took it. Over the years, he orchestrated one of the largest tax fraud schemes in Australia's history, siphoning millions from unsuspecting citizens. Like many who believe they can outsmart the system, Ryan's arrogance eventually led to his downfall. In 2025, after an extensive investigation, authorities finally caught up with him. His arrest wasn't just about financial crime, it was about the betrayal of public trust. As a government employee, he was expected to safeguard taxpayer money, yet he exploited the very people he was supposed to protect. His actions left a massive hole in the system, and now he's facing the consequences. Currently serving time for his crimes, Ryan's future looks grim. With the sheer amount of money he stole and the magnitude of his deception, parole isn't likely to be an option anytime soon. His case stands as a clear warning. No matter how clever you think you are, the law always wins in the end. And that concludes our list of Australia's 10 most notorious criminals, each with a story more shocking than the last. From ruthless killers and extremists to masterminds of massive criminal empires, these individuals left their mark on the country in the worst way possible. Their crimes serve as a chilling reminder of the extremes some will go to for power, money, or destruction. The silver lining? Justice has caught up with them. They're all behind bars, their reigns of terror finally over. If there's one lesson to take away, it's this. No matter how untouchable you think you are, crime never pays. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of crime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories. Stay safe, and remember, justice always prevails.